The atmospheric processors had malfunctioned at precisely 1400 hours, and within minutes, the Galactic Youth Academy's pristine sky had turned the color of old bruises. Commander Vexthor watched the weather readings with growing alarm, his four eyes widening as the wind speeds climbed past anything the dome's exterior could safely handle. "Evacuate the courtyard," he barked into his communicator. "Category 5 storm approaching. All students inside immediately." The Academy's grounds erupted into organized chaos. Insectoid Krathixi students folded their wings and scurried toward the main building. The gelatinous Porians oozed through doorways with remarkable speed. Reptilian Sauron youth bounded across the manicured lawns, their parents' voices calling them to safety through translation devices. But in the eastern courtyard, near the juvenile section, things were not going according to protocol. Professor Sarah Chen, the Academy's only human instructor, had been supervising the youngest students during their outdoor enrichment period when the alert sounded. 23 cubs, kits, and hatchlings of various species, none older than their species equivalent of 5 Earth years, had been playing in the sensory gardens when the first drops began to fall. The rain on Kepler Station wasn't like Earth rain. It carried electromagnetic properties that could disrupt neural patterns in developing brains. For adults, it was merely uncomfortable. For children, it could be catastrophic. Sarah had seen the adult Valerian couple racing toward their cubs, only to be struck by a falling branch from the decorative Zentari trees. They lay stunned, their bioluminescent skin flickering weakly. The cubs, 3 of them, small and covered in downy fur, stood frozen in terror as the rain intensified. She didn't hesitate. While other instructors ushered their charges to safety, calculating acceptable losses with cold efficiency, Sarah ran toward the danger. Her human legs, so often mocked for their lack of specialized adaptation, carried her across the courtyard in powerful strides. The rain pelted her skin, each drop feeling like a small electrical shock, but her mammalian nervous system, redundant, overbuilt, stubbornly resilient, kept firing. The Valerian cubs huddled against their unconscious parents, their large eyes reflecting the strobing lightning. Sarah reached them just as hail began to fall, chunks of ice the size of human fists that would crack chitin and shatter bones. She tore off her jacket, the standard issue academy coat that humans wore more for fashion than necessity in the climate-controlled station. Spreading it wide, she crouched over the 3 cubs, sheltering them with her body. The coat covered their small forms completely while hail hammered against her back. From the safety of the observation deck, Commander Vexthor watched in horror. "Someone pull that human inside! She'll be killed!" But the storm had escalated too quickly. The automated defense systems had sealed all exterior doors, and the electromagnetic interference made remote operation impossible. They could only watch. Sarah felt each impact. Her spine, that curious column of bone that let humans stand upright despite all evolutionary logic, absorbed shock after shock. Her ribs, protecting organs that humans kept internally unlike most species, cracked under the assault. But her hands, those remarkable dexterous hands with opposable thumbs, kept the jacket pinned down, keeping the cubs dry and safe. A particularly large chunk of hail struck her shoulder, and she bit back a scream that would have terrified the children. Instead, she spoke to them in their own language, words she'd studied late into the night because humans, crazy, ambitious humans, believed in learning everyone's tongue. "Shh, little lights, shh, I've got you. Just a little rain, just a little noise," one cub whimpered, asking in its squeaking voice. "Why doesn't it hurt you, Teacher Chen?" Sarah smiled, though blood trickled from her split lip. "Humans are durable. We come from a world that tries very hard to kill us. We got stubborn." Through the storm's roar, she heard other sounds, cries of fear. Without raising her head, she shifted her position and saw them. 4 Krathshi younglings, their wings torn by the wind, unable to make it to shelter. They were huddled against a wall, their carapaces too soft to withstand the hail. Every rational instinct screamed at her to stay put. She had 3 lives saved. That was enough. That was heroic. That was more than anyone expected. But Sarah Chen was human, and humans had never been particularly good at rational self-preservation. "Stay here," she told the Valerian cubs, tucking the coat around them like a nest. "Don't move." Then she ran again, her body protested each step. Her vision blurred from the electromagnetic rain. But she reached the Krathixi children and gathered them in her arms. Their mother had always mocked human weakness. How could a species without armor or wings or venom possibly compete? But now that Mother watched from inside as the weak human cradled her babies against her chest and ran back through hell itself. Sarah made it back to the Valerian cubs and crouched again, spreading herself over all 7 children now. The coat couldn't cover them all, so her body did. Her skin, that soft, vulnerable covering that seemed so impractical, took the punishment. Her blood, pumped by a heart that could double its output in an emergency, kept her conscious through shock that would have killed most species. The storm lasted 17 minutes. When it finally passed and the doors unsealed, medical teams rushed out to find Sarah collapsed on the ground, barely conscious. Beneath her, 7 young aliens were completely unharmed, staring up at the human who had decided their lives were worth more than her own comfort, her own safety, her own life. Commander Vexthor stood over her as medics worked frantically. "Why?" he asked, his voice breaking with emotion his species rarely showed. "Your contract didn't require this. You could have saved yourself." Sarah, drifting into unconsciousness, managed a weak smile. "That's not how humans work." The Academy's medical bay worked through the night. Sarah's injuries were extensive: fractured ribs, internal bleeding, severe contusions, neurological damage from the electromagnetic rain. The doctors, trained in hundreds of species physiologies, marveled at human anatomy's sheer bloody-minded refusal to quit. Her body had continued functioning long past the point where others would have failed. She woke 3 days later to a room filled with gifts, messages, and 7 sets of parents who could barely speak through their gratitude. The Valerian cubs had drawn pictures of their hero teacher. The Krathsi younglings had woven her a wing cloak of honor, though she had no wings to wear it with, but the real change came in the weeks that followed. The Galactic Youth Academy, which had hired Sarah as a token, one human among hundreds of superior species, suddenly found itself inundated with requests from human teachers wanting to join, and every species that had once questioned why humans had been allowed into the galactic community found themselves wondering, what else might these strange, soft, stubborn creatures accomplish? Because when the storm hit the Academy, only a human had stayed outside. Only a human had decided that 7 children she'd known for mere weeks were worth bleeding for. Only a human had looked at certain death and said, "Not today, not these kids." That, they were beginning to understand, was what made humans dangerous. Not their lack of armor, not their absence of natural weapons, but their absolute, irrational, beautiful refusal to abandon anyone they decided to protect, even in a storm, especially in a storm.